Well, what's with the Parshas? Anything?
Oh, there's lots with Parshas.
There's
There's
always
always something to talk
Parshas.
about with Parshas. And Greg, if you're not familiar with the Parshas are the weekly readings that the Jewish people read every week. So as a congregation, no matter whether you're here in the United States or you're in Israel or you're somebody else, they are reading the exact same scriptures every week. And so, which is exactly what they did in the book of Acts. They were teaching the exact same message, the exact same thing, but they would take that message and then go out and they'd get a new message and they'd go out and share that message again. So same concept. And so, and Jesus goes into the synagogue and he rolls out and he reads from Isaiah. That was that week's reading. And so they were fine with him reading that, but when he closed it up and said, in your ears it's been fulfilled, that's when they got offended. Because and then every miracle he did from that moment forward is exactly what they would have been reading that week in the Parsha.
In the Parshas.
Okay? Now the Parshas were established after the 70 years of exile from Babylon. The people forgot who they were. And then on Rosh Hashanah, they are back, built on the wall with Nehemiah and Ezra. People are there building, and they find a Torah. And they're like, oh, we found it. And they begin to read the entire Torah to the entire people, just as Moses would have done his speeches and done his stuff in front of everyone. They began to do that. And as they're doing that, the people begin to weep on the happiest day of the year. And they're crying, and they're like, no, you can't cry today. No, today's a happy day. Today's a joyous day. Today's a day of celebration. But they weep because they had every single thing they were told not to do. Before they realized that they did those things, and that's why they went into captivity. Then while they were in captivity, they continued to do those things under the influence of the captors. And the people began to weep. And Ezra went to the elders, which most likely were the 70 Sanhedrin at the time, and said, what can we do to make sure no one ever forgets who we are and where we came from? And they began to do a 52-week reading. Actually, it's 54 weeks because they have the extra month, and then you do double readings on some months. Because every third year you get an extra month. And so they began and said, every week we're going to read this. And what I've noticed, Greg, is every week since Trump said, give me 15 days to slow the spread, the Parshas have lined up with exactly what's happening in the current events. Okay? So this week's current events, or this week's Parsha, which might as well be current events. So the last 3 weeks we're dealing with the birth of Isaac and Jacob. The deception of Jacob to Isaac and Esau, the deception. Then we're going into the time in which Jacob builds his family in Laban's area, and then now this week he goes out and meets his brother. And so that's what the last 3 weeks our Parshas have been about. So what's really interesting, Dorothy, is in these last 3 Parshas, every Parsha that we've read for the past week, there's a birthing story, okay? But the birthing story is not the birthing story that you're thinking of. So we have the story that Jacob and Esau are fighting in the womb of Rebekah, okay? Now, for them to fight in the womb, let's stop and think. You have identical twins and you have fraternal twins, okay? For them to be fighting in the womb means they're in the exact same space. They're identical twins. But one is getting more nutrients than the other was getting. That's why he's red. He's got more blood coming to him. He's got more things coming into him. And he's hairier because he's getting more of the nutrients from the mother. So they're fighting and vying for position, okay?
In the womb.
In the womb. Now, Rebekah goes to the Lord and says, what's happening here? And she says, well, there's 2 nations warring inside of you. The older will serve the younger. So she's got prophecy. So she knows what's going on. She knows what's happening. We don't know if Isaac knows this, but we know that Rebekah knows this. So we have the birthing situation. Esau comes out first, and it says they called, plural, his name Esau. Esau means the doer. He's covered in hair. He's a doer. He's masculine. He's manly. He's everything that you would expect for your firstborn. He's the doer. All right? And then it says, it's singular, okay, afterwards, he called him Jacob. She didn't call him Jacob. She was in agreement with the name Jacob, okay? So that we have a disconnect here between the naming of Esau, which they both called him Esau, and he called him Jacob. Now we don't get that when we read it. In the Hebrew, that's the way it reads. He called him. It's singular. Only one of them was in agreement with the name Jacob. Jacob, which we know means trickster or supplanter or heel. because he grabbed the heel. It also means to go around about. Okay, and that is what will plague Jacob through the rest of his life. He won't hit things directly. He'll go in a roundabout way to do what he needs to do the rest of his life. Okay, so here we go. We have this birthing story. Then we have another birthing story. Now our next birth. So we're birthing story in mother's territory, the womb. Now we have a birthing story with the blessing in father's territory. Okay, womb's dark. Isaac can't see. He's dark. Okay, it's reversed. One comes in. The first one comes out hairy, and a clothing of hair. One comes in clothed in the other one's clothes, covered in hair. He's impersonating the brother. Okay, then immediately after the blessing's given, he leaves. The other one comes into the womb, and then he cries, because he has been tricked. Now, we expect when a birthing story happens to hear tears, or hear crying, because that means that, you spank the baby on the butt, they breathe, they do all these things. That doesn't happen in this story. Only one cries. So something's not right, something's not healthy here. One went in and tricked the other one. He says, that's why they call him Jacob, the heel grabber, the roundabout one. He's done tricked me twice, 2 times. He's stolen from me. He stole my birthright, and now he's stolen the blessing from me. So there's our second birthing story, okay? The birthing of the blessing, okay? So here we have the birthing of the blessing, which takes on the same characters. Now,
Okay, go back. Stole your birthright. That was when the blessing came, wasn't it?
No, the birthright is when he took the stew, and he said, give me your stew. He says, I'll give it to you if you sell me your birthright.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
But then he comes, which the birthright entitles you to the blessing.
Right.
So he already.
I remember.
So technically, it's his.
Right.
And if you actually go in and read it, Rebecca did not tell him to deceive him. He just told him to go and make your case. Esau's name means doer. So what did he ask Esau to do? Go and kill me some game and prepare it for me. So he's going to do it. So he's the one that can go from beginning to end. I can go out. I can slay the animal. I can clean the animal. I can prepare the meal for it. I can do it from beginning to end. I'm a doer. That's why Isaac loved him, because he could do everything. He says, if I'm going to pass, I'm not going to go to the talker. I'm going to go to the doer. Okay? And so Rebecca goes, hey, plead your case before him. Show him that you can be a doer. Go get the meat. Bring it to me. I'll prepare it. And then you take it to him and plead your case. Well, then
she not tell him to make
he's not confident in who he is.
Yeah.
And so he's not confident in being a doer. He is a doer in a roundabout way. He's not confident. So what does she do? She says, well, put on Esau's clothes, because then you'll feel like you're Esau. You'll feel like a doer. He says, okay, but I'm not here. He'll feel that I'm deceiving him. Well, he's like, well, here. Well, I'll take the goat and the hair so that you feel more like he's just trying to build his confidence so that he goes and pleads his case. But then all of a sudden he goes, it's I, Esau. What? Could you imagine her in the background? What? That's not what I said, do. I just said, go plead your case. Go tell him, hey, I have a right to be it. I've got the birthright. I've gone through. He sold it to me. Just plead your case. But what does he do? He's a trickster. He goes a roundabout way. He doesn't hit things face on. And he will not hit things face on until the final birthing process. Okay? So now he's told to leave. All right? Rebecca tells him to leave. Says, leave this land, leave this place, and go and marry in my family. Don't do anything with this Canaanite woman. We have the story about how the Canaanite women that Esau married just plagued and tormented, and were horrible to Isaac and Rebekah, and they couldn't stand them. Okay, and so he's told to leave. So he goes and he leaves, and he has an indirect contact, an indirect angelic contact. Okay, so he lays his head down on a rock and he has a dream. He has the vision of the angels in the stairway going from up and down the ladder into heaven. And so here he is, he has this. So it's indirect. They're not talking to him. They're not having anything to do with him. But he sees them. They ignore him completely. But he can see what's going on. So it's an indirect contact, okay? And then the Lord says, I'll give you the land. I'll protect you. I'll do everything that I promised Abraham and Isaac. I'll do for you. And then he goes, now, he does not, even with God, he goes a roundabout way. He says, well, God, if you'll protect me, and if you'll return me. And if he's roundabout, he's putting conditions on everything. I'll give you 10% of everything that I have. If it's roundabout, it's not direct with him. It's okay, God, I trust you. I want to do. No, it's if you do this and you do this and you do this and then you do this, then I'll do it. No, he's healing. He's still healing. He's going around. He's gaming the system. Okay. Then he gets to Laban's house, and so he's there with Laban, and he sees Rebecca and he loves Rebecca. Okay. So we have Rebecca, and the Bible doesn't tell us, but if you go to external sources, it tells us that Leah and Rebecca were twins. They're identical twins. Okay. So we have identical twins fighting. And now we have the one that was elevated and cheated himself to the top, now going and marrying identical twins. I mean, you can tell me God ain't got a sense of humor. Okay? He's like, okay, you did it this way, so now he empowers Laban to trick him. And Laban does trick him. And he says, well, you might do that where you're from, but here the younger doesn't go before the older. He knew exactly what Jacob had done. Word had gotten to him. He knew what was going on. They were family. He knows. Okay? He said, we don't do that here. But how much of a bigger scumbag now does Laban look like? Yep. We're not talking like years. We're talking minutes. She's not a year older or 2 years older. She's minutes older. We don't take the one. It's a technicality. We're not going to give you the one you desire, but have the wedding week with her and work another 7 years, and we'll go ahead and give you.
But he didn't know, did he?
Rebecca.
Until after he was married to her?
He didn't know. Because why? She was veiled. And they isolated Rachel from him. And they put her there, and they're identical. The only thing, and if you actually go and study it out, it means she had a lazy eye. That was the difference. And so he was not interested in a weaker female because of the lazy eye. But that weaker female, God used to give him 6 sons. Okay, and so here we have this. So now he's everything he's doing, he's going roundabout. He's going roundabout. So it takes him 20 years. So he works 7 years for Rebecca and gets Leah, and then has to work another 7 years for Rachel, and then works another 7 years to get Rachel, and then here we are for 6 years. He's working and just basically bleeding Laban dry of all of his livestock, and the family's getting offended. The boys, those who should be inheriting, are being offended, but they've taken advantage of him. He changed his wages 10 times. He says, okay, if you're going to get the spotted ones, they took all the spotted ones out, and then so the Lord showed him how to make them become spotted and how to do things with what he's doing with the water and putting on the trough and all the different techniques that the Lord showed him to do, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But then
other than obeying God.
Then finally he decides it's time to leave. God comes to him and tells him it's time to leave. Go back to your father. So he begins to leave. And in the leaving process, for the first time in Jacob's life, instead of going on and going around Seir, where Esau is at, he heads directly for it. For the first time in his life, he's going to hit things on head on. He's going to come to it and say, look, I'm going to make things right. And if you actually read what he brings before Esau and the way he presents himself to Esau, he actually gives Esau back the blessing. Everything that Isaac spoke over him, that you would do this and you would bow before, and all these, he bowed before him 7 times. He gave him the animals. He gave him the livestock. He gave him all the things. He gave him back the blessing that was. He said, take my blessing because I took it from you. So for the first time, he's hitting things head on. But he has the encounter with what the Bible tells us is an angel. Now, from a Hebraic point of view, it's not an angel. Okay, and this is what the sages and stuff say. I'm not saying I agree with this, but I'm saying it's a lot of insight that comes from this. Jacob divides the family up. He sends this flock, and he sends this flock. He sends 3 flocks ahead of him to go meet Esau, and he sends a messenger, and that messenger actually is translated to angel. So he met angels, and he sent an angel ahead of him to tell him that your brother's coming, and these are your gifts, and these are your things. And then the angel comes back. Those messengers come back and say, your brother's coming with 400 men, and he's like, oh crap. He's going to kill me. He's still angry. It's been 20 years. He's still mad. Oh, Lord, what's going to happen? So then he separates the family out. So he divides the family into, he puts the two concubines and their children in front, and then he puts Leah in front, and then he puts Rachel and Joseph. So if I'm going to lose, I'm not going to lose everything. If I have to lose, I'm going to put things in order of priority. Okay, and to do that, and then he separates
Put your kids out there.
He puts them out. He puts them out and separates them. Well, he had favorites, and we're not supposed to have favorites when it comes to that. And but he separates.
Not your favorite. Get over it.
He separates them out, and then he's alone. It tells us he's alone. So if he's alone, where does this other person that he's battling with come from? Okay, and so what they go in and say is with the wording, because it's different pronoun, because you can't tell who's who. You can't tell which is Jacob and which is the other, and you can't tell in the wording who is who and which one's doing which, and the different things in the wording of him struggling with the so-called angel. And what they're saying is he struggled with himself, because now it's another birthing moment. He's identical twin. And so he's split himself into two, basically, and he's fighting himself, and he's asking himself to allow him to have the blessing. And he tells him, and he's like, I can't give you what you already have. You already have the blessing. I can't give you that to you. And then so even to the point where he takes and moves his hip out of socket, he's fighting and won't let go, and the struggle continues to go on and on and on and on. And what does he do? He says, I'll tell you what I will do. I'll give you the name that you always desired. Because you've struggled with God and you've struggled with man. You are Jacob no more. You are now Israel. So he came into an inner peace within himself before he goes and meets his brother in the process of going forward. So it's dark. It tells us it's nighttime. It's another birthing moment. There's two people. They're fighting. They're vying and jockeying for position. And this time, he's birthed the right way. And he goes and meets his brother and gives him the blessing and offers it to him. And the brother didn't want to accept it. He said, no, I've got plenty. And he says, no, I insist. I did you wrong. And the only way that I can make things right is that you take what I have. I still have plenty with what I'm giving you. Please take, because I did you wrong. I took your birthright. I tricked you, but I got to make it right. And that's the third birthing story. So there's no less than 3 birthing stories that we read over the past 3 weeks. But as Christians, we don't see that because we don't go into the deep understanding of the text the way it's actually written. We understand
love when you story tell.
We understand it, read it across. Oh, this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. But when we dive deep into the words that are actually there, not the translated words, but the actual words that are there, not someone's interpretation, but what it actually says. There's so much more to the story.
Now bring it to today.
Bring it to today. We have 2 nations fighting. We have 2 people, and we have Democrat and Republic. We have masked and no masked. We have vaxxed and no vaxxed, and we're fighting. But we're one family. And we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and let go of whatever's holding us back from loving one another and move forward into what God has for us in this time and season. All these mandates are coming. All these requirements are here. All these people are ready to fight and to come on and to attack one another. We have in the news. We have 2 stories. We have the one in Georgia where a black person was killed. A young man was killed by 2 white guys. We have another story with, I can't remember the kid's name, Rittenhouse. We have that going on right here. We got people ready to riot in the street. We're one family. We're one nation. But we're treating ourselves as though we're individual nations. We're BLM nation. We're critical race theory nation. We're this nation. We're one nation. We're the nation of the United States. We are united. And the moment that we begin to realize who we are and we begin to unite and work together, then we'll begin to see the blessings the way Jacob saw it. We'll be able to bring peace and unity back to our land, and we'll be back to what we were originally created to be, a family.
Yep, and that's exactly where we are, all tore up and broken up.